They humiliated me in public by cutting up my credit card and handing me a $50 bill. "We're protecting your assets," they said. 2 weeks later, when the repo man took their car and the lights went out, I handed the $50 back to them. "Here is your allowance. Get out." There is a particular smell to high-quality leather that cannot be faked. It smells of tannins, of craftsmanship, and, if you have lived the life I have lived, it smells of success. I stood in the center of the designer handbag department at the Neiman Marcus in the King of Prussia Mall. In my hands, I held a tote bag made of cognac-colored calfskin. It was buttery soft. It was elegant. It was exactly the kind of bag a woman buys when she has spent 40 years building a commercial logistics empire from a single warehouse into a fleet of 300 trucks. My name is Martha Higgins. I am 72 years old. To the world, or at least the world that reads the business pages of the Philadelphia Inquirer, I am a retired tycoon, a woman of steel who negotiated union contracts without blinking. But to the woman currently marching toward me across the polished marble floor, I was nothing more than a toddler who had wandered away from the playpen. "Martha!" The voice cut through the hushed, ambient music of the department store like a serrated knife. I stiffened. I didn't turn around immediately. I looked at the sales associate, a lovely young woman named Sarah, who had spent the last 20 minutes treating me with the dignity I used to take for granted. Sarah's eyes went wide. She looked over my shoulder, her professional smile faltering. Is that your daughter-in-law?" Sarah whispered. "Unfortunately," I said. I turned around. Brenda was storming toward me. She was wearing tennis whites, though she does not play tennis. She plays lunch at the country club, a sport that requires far more stamina and significantly more venom. Her blonde ponytail was bobbing aggressively with every step. Trailing behind her, looking at his phone, was my son, Stephen. Stephen is 45 years old. He has my eyes, my chin, and absolutely none of my spine. "Martha!" Brenda reached me, breathless and flushed with manufactured outrage. "What are you doing here? You said you were going to the pharmacy." "I did go to the pharmacy," I said calmly, clutching the bag a little tighter. "And then I decided to come here. It is my birthday, Brenda. I am treating myself." "Treating yourself?" Brenda laughed. It was a sharp, barking sound. She looked at the bag in my hand. She looked at the price tag dangling from the handle, $2,400. "Stephen, look at this," Brenda snapped, pointing at the tag. "She is buying a $2,400 bag. We talked about this. We talked about the budget." Stephen looked up from his phone. He sighed. He looked tired. He always looked tired these days, burdened by the heavy responsibility of spending my money. "Mom," Stephen said, his voice pleading, "come on. That is a lot of money. You know we have the roof repairs coming up at the house. We need to be careful with the liquid cash." "The roof repairs on my house," I reminded him. "The house you two have been living in rent-free for 2 years. We are living there to care for you," Brenda hissed, stepping closer. She lowered her voice, but it only made it more menacing. "After the stroke, Martha, you couldn't handle the daily management. We sacrificed our privacy to move in and help you. And this is how you repay us? By blowing the household budget on vanity items?" I felt a flush of heat rise up my neck. 2 years ago, I had a minor stroke. It was frightening. I had some aphasia, some confusion. For about 3 months, I needed help. I let them move in. I let Stephen take over the bill paying because my handwriting was shaky. But I had recovered. I was doing the Sunday crossword in pen again. I was walking 3 miles a day. However, every time I tried to take the reins back, Brenda and Stephen pulled them tighter. They told me I was still fragile. They told me I got confused about the numbers. They treated my recovery not as a triumph, but as a nuisance. "I am buying the bag," I said firmly. I turned back to Sarah. I placed the bag on the counter. "Ring it up, please," I said. I reached into my purse. I pulled out my wallet. I extracted the card. It was a heavy card, a black anodized metal Visa Infinite. It was the card I had carried for 15 years. It was the card that had paid for client dinners in Tokyo and supplier meetings in Berlin. I held it out to Sarah. "No!" Brenda shrieked. She didn't just use her words, she physically lunged. Brenda's hand shot out and snatched the card from my fingers before Sarah could take it. "Brenda!" I gasped. "Give that back!" "I cannot let you do this," Brenda announced. She wasn't whispering anymore. She was performing. She looked around at the other shoppers, a woman looking at scarves, a couple browsing wallets. She wanted an audience. "You are out of control, Martha," Brenda declared, holding the card above her head like a trophy. "You are spending recklessly. You are compromising your future care. Stephen and I have a fiduciary duty to protect your assets from your impulse control issues." "Impulse control?" I said, my voice trembling with humiliation. "I built a logistics company from the ground up. I am not a child." "You act like one," Brenda yelled. She reached into her oversized designer purse, a purse, I noted, that she had bought with my money 3 months ago. She pulled out a pair of scissors. They were small, sharp embroidery scissors. Brenda carried them because she claimed she was into crafting, though the only thing I had ever seen her craft was a narrative about her own martyrdom. "What are you doing?" I whispered. "I am putting an end to this," Brenda said. She held the black metal card with 2 hands. She positioned the scissors. "If you have ever been publicly shamed by someone who is eating your food, living in your house and spending your money, you know the cold, dark feeling that washed over me in that moment. It is a feeling of absolute clarity. If you believe that elders deserve respect and not ridicule, hit that like button." Because Brenda was about to make a mistake that couldn't be undone. Snip. The scissors crunched against the metal. It was a tough card. Brenda had to use 2 hands. She grunted with effort. Crack. The card snapped in 2. The chip was severed. She dropped the 2 halves onto the glass countertop. They made a harsh clattering sound. "There," Brenda said, breathing hard. Card declined. The silence in the store was absolute. Sarah, the sales clerk, had her hand over her mouth. The woman in the scarf section was staring with her jaw dropped. Stephen looked at his shoes. He couldn't even look at me. "You cut my card," I said softly. "We are protecting you," Brenda said, straightening her tennis skirt. "We are saving you from yourself. You don't need a bag, Martha. You need structure." She grabbed my arm. Her grip was tight, bordering on painful. "Come on," she said. "We are going home, and we are going to have a serious family meeting about your allowance." "Allowance?" I repeated. "Yes," she said, pulling me away from the counter, away from the beautiful cognac bag, away from my dignity. "Clearly, you cannot handle credit. From now on, it is cash only. Let's go, Stephen." Stephen followed us like a kicked dog. I walked out of the store. I didn't scream. I didn't fight her. I didn't make a scene. I just walked. But as we passed the perfume counter, inhaling the scent of expensive flowers and money, my mind wasn't blank. It was whirring. It was clicking into gear in a way it hadn't in 2 years. Brenda thought she had just cut off my supply. She thought she had snapped the leash. She had no idea she had just cut the only thread holding her lifestyle together. The drive back to the estate was excruciating. I sat in the back seat of the Range Rover. It was my Range Rover, technically. I had bought it the year before the stroke. Now Brenda drove it as her daily vehicle. She had adjusted the mirrors. She had changed the radio presets to terrible pop music. She had put a sticker on the back window for her yoga studio. Brenda drove with aggressive, jerky movements, checking her eyes in the rearview mirror. "I hope you understand why I had to do that, Martha," Brenda said, breaking the silence as we turned off the highway onto the tree-lined streets of the main line. "You humiliated me," I said, looking out the window at the stone walls of the neighbours' estates. "I saved you $2,000, Brenda corrected. "Do you know how much hearing aids cost? Do you know how much private nursing costs? We have to conserve capital. Stephen and I are looking at the long term." "The long term," I muttered. "Yes," Stephen chimed in from the passenger seat. He turned around to look at me. Mom, look, Brenda is just... She's passionate about the budget. We just want to make sure you're taken care of. That account, it goes down faster than you think. That account, I said. The household trust, Stephen said. The one we manage. It's not a bottomless pit, Mom. The dividends come in on the 1st, and by the 25th things are tight. We are just trying to make it stretch. I looked at my son. He was wearing a cashmere sweater. On his wrist was a Rolex Submariner. Things are tight, I asked. Is that why you just leased a Porsche Macan, Stephen? Stephen flinched. That is for business, Mom. I need to project success if I am going to get my consulting firm off the ground. Stephen's consulting firm had been getting off the ground for 6 years. As far as I could tell, his only client was me, and his only service was draining my liquidity. And the country club? I asked. Brenda, didn't you upgrade your membership to the platinum level last month? That is for networking, Brenda snapped, turning the wheel sharply into our driveway. I am building connections. It all comes back to the family, Martha. Why are you so selfish? Why do you count every penny we spend but think you can blow thousands on a purse? We pulled up to the house. It was a beautiful house. A 1920s stone manor with slate roofing and copper gutters. I had bought it with the bonus from my first major merger in 1998. I loved this house, but lately it didn't feel like mine. Brenda parked in the circular driveway. She turned off the engine. She turned around in her seat to face me. Okay, she said. Here is the new reality. Listen closely. Because I don't want you to get confused later. She reached into her purse, the one with the scissors, and pulled out her wallet. She extracted a single bill. $50. She reached back and handed it to me. This is it, Brenda said. $50 per week. Cash. I stared at the bill. Grant's face looked back at me unamused. You are putting me on an allowance? I asked. For your incidentals, Brenda said. Coffee, a magazine, gum, anything else, food, utilities, clothes, medical, Stephen and I will handle directly through the account. You don't need to carry a card. You don't need to write checks. We will protect the assets. Protect the assets, I repeated. It was their favourite phrase. Yes, Brenda said. Clearly the stroke affected your judgment more than we thought. Carrying that black card was dangerous. Someone could have scammed you. Or you could have bought 10 handbags. I see, I said. I took the $50 bill. I folded it neatly in half. Then I folded it again. Thank you, Brenda, I said. My voice was very quiet. I understand the new rules. Brenda blinked. She had expected a fight. She had expected me to cry or scream or threaten to call a lawyer. She was ready for a battle. She wasn't ready for surrender. Oh, she said, looking at Stephen. Well, good. I am glad you are being reasonable for once. I am very reasonable, I said. I am a businesswoman after all. I understand budget cuts. I opened the door and stepped out onto the driveway. I am going to my room, I said. I have a headache. Go ahead, Brenda waved a hand dismissively. We are going to order sushi. Do you want a roll? Or is that too spicy for your stomach? I'll have tea, I said. I walked up the front steps. I walked through the foyer, past the large oil painting of myself that hung over the mantel, a painting Brenda had talked about moving to the attic because it was a bit narcissistic. I walked up the grand staircase. I didn't turn left toward the master suite. The master suite belonged to Brenda and Stephen now. They had moved in there 6 months ago because the bathroom was larger, and they needed the space. I turned right, down the hall to the guest wing. My room was nice enough. It had a view of the garden. But it was small. It was a room for a visitor. I went inside and closed the door. I locked it. I sat down on the edge of the bed. I looked at the $50 bill in my hand. Brenda thought she had stripped me of my power. She thought that by cutting up the plastic rectangles, she had severed my connection to my wealth. She made the classic mistake of the amateur manager. She confused the interface with the database. The credit card was just a piece of metal. It was a key, but it wasn't the vault. Stephen and Brenda managed the Higgins Household Trust. It was an account I had set up years ago to handle domestic expenses. It usually held a balance of about $200,000. They saw the monthly deposits hit that account, $8,000 here, $10,000 there, and they assumed that was the income. They assumed that was the limit of the world. They didn't know about Phoenix Holdings. When I sold Higgins Logistics to a German conglomerate 10 years ago, I didn't put the buyout money into a checking account. I didn't put it in a trust that a son-in-law could access. I put $15 million into a holding company, a private LLC registered in Delaware. And the black card? The one Brenda had just destroyed with her embroidery scissors. That card was linked directly to Phoenix Holdings. It was the bridge. Every month, I used that card to pay for things, and every month, an automatic sweep transfer moved money from Phoenix to the household trust to cover the balance. Brenda had just cut the bridge. I reached into my nightstand drawer. I moved aside a stack of woolen socks. I felt for the false bottom I had installed myself with a screwdriver 2 weeks ago. I lifted the panel. Sitting there was a small, cheap flip phone, a burner phone. I had bought it with cash at the pharmacy the day they took my iPhone away to clean it up and installed tracking software on it. I opened the flip phone. I dialed a number I knew by heart. It rang twice. Weiss Private Wealth Management, a crisp voice answered. This is David Weiss. David, I said. It's Martha. Martha! David's voice warmed instantly. I haven't heard from you in weeks. How are you? How is the retirement treating you? It is treating me poorly, David, I said. I am currently holding a $50 bill which represents my entire operating capital for the week. Excuse me, David asked. My daughter-in-law just cut up the Visa Infinite, I said. In the middle of Neiman Marcus, she told me she is protecting my assets. She has put me on an allowance. There was a silence on the line. Then, a low, dangerous growl. She cut the card? David asked. Does she know what that card does? No, I said. She thinks it is just a credit card. She doesn't know it is the authorization trigger for the monthly household transfer. Martha, David said, if the card is destroyed, the auto sweep will fail. The transfer from Phoenix to the household account won't happen next week. I know, I said. The household account is... Let me check, I heard typing. It is currently sitting at $12,000. They spent $40,000 last month alone. If the transfer stops, they will bounce. I finished his sentence. Everything will bounce. Do you want me to issue a replacement card? David asked. I can have it rushed to you. Or I can set up a direct wire to the household account to keep them afloat. I looked at the $50 bill. I thought about the scissors. I thought about the smirk on Brenda's face when she said, card declined. No, David, I said. Do not send a new card and cancel the auto sweep. Cancel it? Terminate it, I said. Sever the link between Phoenix Holdings and the household account. I want that account isolated. Whatever is in there is all they have. Martha, David warned. If I do that, the bills won't get paid. The mortgage, the utilities, the car leases, it will get ugly. They want to manage the budget, I said. Let's see how they manage without the subsidy. Understood, David said. I am freezing the transfer immediately. And what about you? Do you need cash? I have $50, I said. I will be fine. But David? Yes? Open a new personal checking account for me, in my name only, at a different bank. And set up a weekly transfer of $5,000 from Phoenix to that new account. I might want to buy a handbag later. Consider it done, David said. Thank you, David. I hung up the phone. I hid it back under the false bottom. I stood up and walked to the window. Down in the driveway, Stephen was admiring his Porsche. He was wiping a smudge off the hood with his sleeve. He looked so proud. He looked so secure. He had no idea that he was standing on a trapdoor, and I had just pulled the lever. Enjoy the sushi, Brenda, I whispered to the glass. I sat back down on the bed. I picked up my knitting needles. I was going to knit a scarf. It would take time. But I had plenty of time. I just had to wait for the first check to bounce. The first week of my rehabilitation passed with the slow, grinding rhythm of a prison sentence. On Monday morning, Brenda found me in the kitchen. I was making toast. Dry toast, because we were out of the artisanal butter she liked, and I didn't want to be accused of wasting the last scrape. "Good morning, Martha," Brenda chirped. She was wearing a silk kimono that I recognized. It was a gift I had received from a Japanese shipping magnate in 1995. I had never worn it because it was too ostentatious. Brenda wore it while eating a grapefruit. "Good morning, Brenda," I said, keeping my eyes on my toast. "It is Monday," she announced, as if she had invented the calendar. She reached into the pocket of the kimono and pulled out a crisp bill. "Here is your stipend." She placed the $50 bill on the marble counter. She smoothed it out with her manicured fingernail. "Now remember," she said, using her teacher voice, "this has to last you until next Monday, so if you want those special vitamins or the fancy tea, you need to prioritize. Stephen and I are really trying to get the overhead under control." "I understand," I said. I picked up the bill. I tucked it into the pocket of my housecoat. "Thank you." "You're welcome," she said, turning back to her grapefruit. "Oh, and we are having a dinner party on Friday. The Hendersons and the Millers are coming. Try to stay in your room, okay? We don't want to overwhelm you with a crowd. You know how you get fatigued." "Fatigued," I repeated. "Yes, I will stay upstairs." "Perfect." I took my toast and walked out to the sunroom. I sat in my wicker chair and looked out at the garden. The landscapers were there, trimming the hedges. I watched them work. I knew the invoice for their services was due on the 15th. It was $4,000 a month. I took a bite of dry toast. I was playing the part perfectly. The chastised, confused old woman. The burden. But inside I was checking the internal ledger. It was the 5th of the month. Under the old system, the system Brenda had severed with her embroidery scissors, the automatic sweep from Phoenix Holdings would have hit the household trust account on the 1st. It was usually a transfer of $25,000 to cover the mortgage, the staff, the leases, and Brenda's lifestyle enhancements. I knew because David Weiss had confirmed it via my burner phone that the transfer had been cancelled. The pipe was dry, but the water in the hose hadn't run out yet. The household trust account had a buffer. About $12,000, David had said. That was enough to keep the lights on for a week, maybe 2 if they were frugal. But Brenda and Stephen were not frugal. Later that afternoon, I heard the delivery truck. A case of wine, not just any wine, a case of Chateau Margaux, 12 bottles. I watched from the landing as Stephen signed for it. He looked thrilled. "Put it in the cellar," Stephen instructed the delivery man. "Careful with it. That is liquid gold." I did the math in my head. A case of current vintage Margaux. That was at least $8,000. Stephen had just spent 2/3 of their remaining liquidity on fermented grapes. He walked past me on the stairs, humming. "Nice delivery?" I asked quietly. "Oh, hey, Mum," Stephen said, startled. "Yeah, just restocking. Got a great deal on some futures. You have to spend money to make money, right?" "Is that the philosophy?" I asked. "It is about asset appreciation," he said condescendingly. "Brenda and I are building a collection. It is an investment." "I see," I said. "Well, enjoy it." "We will," he said. "We are opening a bottle tonight to celebrate." "Celebrate what?" "We booked the Aspen trip," Stephen grinned. "Christmas in the Rockies, the St. Regis. We deserve a break after everything with your health. It has been a stressful year for us." "The St. Regis," I said. "That sounds expensive." "We put the deposit down," Stephen said. "Don't worry about the cost, Mom. We have it covered. The trust is performing beautifully now that we are actively managing it." He patted my shoulder. "You just enjoy your toast," he said. He went into the master bedroom, my master bedroom, and closed the door. I went back to my guest room. I sat on the bed. $8,000 for wine. The St. Regis deposit would be at least another $5,000. That was $13,000. They had $12,000 in the bank. I picked up my knitting needles. I was working on a scarf in a deep charcoal grey. It was a soothing, repetitive motion. Knit 1, purl 2. The math was absolute. The variables had collided. It wouldn't take 2 weeks. It would happen today. The crash happened at 6:30 in the evening. I was in the kitchen boiling water for tea. I was sticking to my allowance, so I was using a tea bag I had used yesterday. Waste not, want not. Brenda was at the kitchen island. She was on her laptop. She had a glass of the $1,200 wine in her hand. She looked radiant. "Okay," she was saying into her phone, which was propped up on a stand. "Yes, I want the suite with the mountain view, the butler service package." Obviously. She was talking to a travel agent. Or perhaps the concierge. "And book us a table at Matsuhisa for Christmas Eve," Brenda commanded. "Table for 4. We might bring friends." She took a sip of wine. She tapped a key on her laptop. "I am putting the deposit through now," she said. "Use the card ending in 4490. That was the debit card for the household trust. "Sending payment?" Brenda hummed. She waited. She frowned. "Hang on," she said. "It says processing error. Let me try again." She hit the enter key harder, as if percussive force would improve her solvency. "That is weird," Brenda muttered. It declined again. She picked up the phone. "Are you running it correctly?" she snapped. "It is a Visa Business debit. There is plenty of room on it." She listened for a moment. "Well, try it again," she yelled. "Split the payment if you have to. Do 5,000 now." She waited. "Declined?" Her voice went up an octave. "What do you mean declined by issuer? That is ridiculous. I am looking at the account. Well, I haven't logged in today, but I know what is in there. We just got the monthly transfer on the 1st. I poured the boiling water into my mug. The steam rose up, curling around my face. "Fine," Brenda spat. "Hold the reservation. I have to call the bank. Their fraud detection is probably triggered because it is a large amount. They are so sensitive." She hung up on the concierge. She dialed the bank. I walked over to the table and sat down. I blew on my tea. "Is everything all right, Brenda?" I asked softly. "Fine, Martha," she snapped without looking at me. "Just banking incompetence. The algorithms flag everything these days." She waited on hold. She tapped her fingernails on the marble counter. "Click, click, click. Finally!" she said into the phone. "This is Brenda Higgins. I am a signatory on the Higgins Household Trust. I am trying to make a transaction and it is being declined. You need to lift the fraud block." She paused. She listened. "What do you mean there is no fraud block?" Brenda asked. She stopped tapping. "Then why did it decline?" She listened. Her face, usually a flushed pink from the wine, began to drain of colour. It turned a pale, sickly beige. "Insufficient funds?" Brenda whispered. "That is impossible. That is a lie." She looked at the laptop. She frantically opened a new tab. She logged into the bank portal. "I am looking at it right now," she hissed. "We have—" The page loaded. I watched her eyes scan the screen. I watched the moment the number registered. "$400? Brenda shrieked. "How? We had 12,000 this morning. We just bought wine." "Yes," the voice on the phone must have said. "The wine charge went through. That took you to a balance of 4,000. And then the automatic mortgage payment for the beach house attempted to clear." "But the transfer," Brenda yelled. "The monthly transfer from Phoenix Holdings. It comes in on the 1st. It is $25,000. She listened. "It didn't come in?" Brenda asked. Her voice was trembling now. "What do you mean no inbound wire was received?" She looked at me. I took a sip of tea. I looked at her with wide, innocent eyes. "It is automatic," Brenda screamed at the poor banker. "It has happened on the 1st of the month for 10 years. Check the history. Where is the money?" She listened for another minute. Then she slammed the phone down on the counter. "Stephen!" she screamed. "Stephen, get down here!" Stephen came running down the stairs. He was still holding his wine glass. "What? What is it?" "The money is gone," Brenda gasped. The account is overdrawn. The Aspen deposit bounced. What? Stephen laughed nervously. That's crazy. The transfer didn't happen, Brenda said. She turned her wild eyes toward me. Martha, did you touch the Phoenix account? Me? I asked, putting my hand to my chest. Brenda, how could I? You took my phone. You took my computer. You cut up my card. I have $50 in my pocket. That is all I have access to. Then why didn't the money come? Stephen demanded, looking at his mother with a mix of panic and accusation. Maybe. I hesitated, choosing my words with surgical precision. Maybe the card you cut up was important? The card? Brenda scoffed. That was just a credit card, Martha. It was a spending tool. It has nothing to do with the wire transfer. That is a back-end bank function. Are you sure? I asked. Technology is so complicated these days. Everything is linked. I know how banking works, Martha, Brenda yelled. I don't need a lecture from someone who can't even buy a handbag without supervision. It is a glitch. It has to be a glitch. Of course, I said. A glitch? I will call David Weiss, Stephen said, pulling out his phone. He manages the Phoenix accounts. He will fix it. Stephen dialed. He put it on speaker. We are sorry, a robotic voice answered. The number you have dialed is no longer in service. Stephen frowned. He looked at the phone. That is his direct line, Stephen said. I have called him on that number for 5 years. Try the office main line, Brenda urged. Stephen dialed the main switchboard for Weiss Private Wealth. Weiss Private Wealth, a receptionist answered. This is Stephen Higgins, he said, puffing out his chest. I need to speak to David Weiss immediately. It is an emergency regarding the Higgins transfers. One moment, Mr. Higgins, the receptionist said. The hold music played, Vivaldi. It played for a long time. Then, a strange voice came on the line. Not David. Mr. Higgins? A woman's voice asked. This is Sarah, Mr. Weiss's legal assistant. Mr. Weiss is unavailable to speak with you. Unavailable? Stephen barked. I am his client, or rather my mother is, and I manage her affairs. Put him on. I am afraid that is not possible, Sarah said coolly. Mr. Weiss has received strict instructions regarding the privacy of the Phoenix Holdings accounts. He has been instructed that you are not an authorized party. Not authorized? Stephen's face went red. I have power of attorney. I have the paperwork. We have reviewed the power of attorney on file, Sarah said. It covers the Higgins Household Trust and specific medical decisions. It does not grant access to Phoenix Holdings LLC, which is a corporate entity. The corporate officer has revoked all third-party communication privileges. The corporate officer? Stephen stammered. Who is the corporate officer? Martha Higgins, Sarah said. Stephen and Brenda both froze. They turned to look at me slowly. I was still drinking my tea. Mom, Stephen whispered. Did you call them? I haven't called anyone, Stephen, I said. I don't have a phone, remember? Then why are they saying this? Brenda demanded, grabbing the phone from Stephen. Listen to me, you glorified secretary. We have bills to pay. The transfer needs to happen today. If you don't release those funds, I will sue you for negligence. Mom, Sarah's voice hardened. The automatic transfer was linked to a specific authorization token. The Visa Infinite card issued to the corporate officer. Our records show that the card was destroyed and reported as invalid. When the card is terminated, the recurring payment authorizations attached to it are automatically cancelled for security. It is a failsafe. Brenda dropped the phone. It clattered onto the marble counter. She looked at her hands, the hands that had held the embroidery scissors. She whispered. I cancelled the transfer. It appears so, I said. By protecting my assets, you seem to have frozen your own. Fix it, Brenda hissed. She lunged across the island. Fix it, Martha. Call them. Tell them to turn it back on. I can't, I said calmly. Why not? Because, I said, holding up my empty hands. I don't have a phone, and I don't have a card, and according to you, I am not competent enough to handle financial decisions. Stop playing games, Stephen shouted. This isn't a game. We have $0. We have negative dollars. Well, I stood up, taking my mug to the sink. Then I suppose you will have to do what you told me to do. What is that? Budget wisely, I said. I have $50. I am willing to loan you 20 for a pizza, but I will need it back by Monday. I walked out of the kitchen. Behind me, the silence of the house was broken by the sound of Brenda screaming. It was a long, high-pitched wail of realization. She had cut the golden goose's throat, thinking she was just trimming its feathers. I went upstairs to my room. I locked the door. I pulled the burner phone from under the false bottom of the drawer. There was a text message from David Weiss. Transaction confirmed. Household link severed. New personal account funded with $5,000. Debit card overnighted to your P.O. box. I smiled. I sat down on the bed and picked up my knitting. The scarf was coming along nicely. Downstairs, the lights flickered. Ah, that would be the electric bill. I recalled seeing a disconnection notice on the counter last week. Brenda had ignored it, assuming the autopay would catch it today. The lights flickered again, and then the house plunged into darkness. "Mom!" Stephen screamed from the darkness downstairs. "The power went out." I didn't answer. I just kept knitting in the dark. I knew the pattern by heart. A mansion without electricity is not a castle. It is a crypt. For 3 days, the power remained off. The Philadelphia Electric Company is remarkably efficient when an account is flagged for non-payment, and the automatic draft bounces. The sprawling stone house on the main line, usually a beacon of warmth and light, became a cold, echoing cavern. The perishables in the sub-zero refrigerator began to spoil. The artisanal cheeses Brenda loved so much grew fuzzy molds. The $1,200 wine sat in the cellar, useless against the creeping chill of the autumn nights. I, however, was comfortable. I had lived through the blizzard of '78 in a drafty apartment with a newborn baby. I knew how to layer wool. I knew that a candle offers more than just light. It offers a focal point for patience. Stephen and Brenda, on the other hand, were unravelling. On Thursday morning, I sat in the sunroom, the warmest room in the house, reading a paperback book by the natural light. I was wearing my cashmere cardigan and drinking tea made with water I had heated on the gas grill outside. Brenda stormed in. She looked ragged. Her hair was unwashed because the hot water heater was electric. She was wearing a parka over her silk pajamas. "This is insane, Martha," she screamed. Her voice was scratchy. "We cannot live like this. I can see my breath in the kitchen." "It is chilly," I agreed, turning a page. "Perhaps you should put on a hat. You lose 80% of your body heat through your head." "I do not want a hat," she shrieked. "I want electricity. I want a hot shower." Stephen is on the phone with the bank again, but they won't talk to him. They keep saying he is not authorized on the Phoenix account. You have to call them. "I told you, Brenda," I said calmly. "I don't have a phone." "Use Stephen's." She thrust a smartphone at me. "I don't know the password to the account," I lied smoothly. "You told me I was confused about the numbers. I suppose you were right. I can't remember any of the security codes." "You are doing this on purpose," she accused, her eyes wild. "You are punishing us." "I am abiding by your rules," I said. "You put me on an allowance. You took control. I am simply letting you manage the household as you insisted." Before she could scream again, a loud rhythmic beeping sound cut through the air. Beep, beep, beep. It was the sound of a heavy vehicle backing up. Brenda froze. "What is that?" she whispered. "It sounds like a truck," I said. "The delivery," she gasped, hope flooding her face. "Maybe Stephen ordered a generator or food." She ran to the window. I marked my place in the book and followed her slowly. It was not a delivery truck. It was a flatbed tow truck. It was backing into the circular driveway, right up to the front of the garage where Stephen parked his pride and joy. The Porsche Macan. "No," Brenda breathed. "No, no, no." Stephen burst out of the house, running onto the driveway in his slippers. He was waving his arms frantically. "Hey!" Stephen shouted. "Hey! What are you doing? Get away from the car!" The driver of the tow truck, a large man in a reflective vest, ignored him. He hopped out, holding a clipboard. He checked the VIN number on the Porsche's dashboard. "Get away!" Stephen yelled, shoving the man's shoulder. The driver turned. He didn't look intimidated. He looked bored. "Stephen Higgins?" the driver asked. "Yes, and you are trespassing." "I am repossessing," the driver corrected. "Lease default. 3 months of missed payments, plus the bounce fee from Tuesday. The bank wants the asset back." 3 months, Brenda whispered, pressing her face against the glass. "He told me he paid it." I looked at her. "Stephen lies about money, Brenda. Surely you knew that. He learned it from watching you." "Shut up," she hissed. She ran outside to join the fray. "You cannot take this car," Brenda screamed at the driver. "Do you know who we are? We are the Higgins family. This is a simple banking error. The transfer is coming." "Lady," the driver said, hooking the chains onto the Porsche's axle. "I have heard that one before. Unless you have $8,400 in cash right now, the car goes to the impound lot." "Stephen, pay him!" Brenda yelled. "Write a check!" "I can't," Stephen wailed. "The account is frozen." "The check will bounce. Then use the emergency cash." "I spent the emergency cash on the wine," Stephen shouted back. The driver engaged the winch. Whir clank. The pristine white Porsche, the symbol of Stephen's imaginary success, began to tilt upward onto the flatbed. "Mom!" Stephen looked up at the window. He saw me standing there. "Mom, do something. They are taking the Porsche. Pay him, please." Brenda looked up too. Her face was twisted with desperation. "Martha," she screamed, "give him the money. You have millions. Stop being a witch and pay the man." I looked at them. I looked at the car. I opened the window. "I am sorry, Stephen," I called down. "I can't help you." "Why not?" he sobbed. "Because," I said, my voice carrying clearly in the crisp autumn air, "I am protecting my assets." I closed the window. I watched as the truck drove away, the Porsche bouncing slightly on the bed. Stephen fell to his knees on the gravel driveway. Brenda stood over him, screaming, her arms flailing like a windmill. It was time. I walked downstairs. I walked out the front door. I stood on the porch. Stephen was crying. Actual tears. He was 45 years old and he was crying over a car he couldn't afford. "Are you finished?" I asked. They both spun around. "You did this," Brenda snarled, marching up the steps. She looked like she wanted to hit me. "You let this happen. You have the money. I know you have the money. You have that secret company, Phoenix Holdings." "Yes," I said. "I do." "Then why?" she demanded. "Why let us rot? Why let the power go out? Why let them take the car?" "Because you cut the cord, Brenda," I said. I reached into my pocket. I pulled out the $50 bill she had given me on Monday. "You stood in Neiman Marcus," I said, my voice hardening. "You took out a pair of scissors, and you cut my Visa Infinite card in half." "So what?" she yelled. "It was just a credit card." "No," I said. "It was the key." I stepped closer to her. She flinched. "You didn't understand the structure, Brenda," I said. "You were so arrogant, so sure of your own intelligence, that you never bothered to ask how the money actually moved. That card wasn't just for spending. It was the authentication token for the monthly transfer." I saw the realization hit her eyes. "The bank set it up that way," I continued, "to prevent fraud. If the primary card is reported lost, stolen, or destroyed, the automatic sweeps from the holding company are suspended immediately. It is a safety feature." "You," she stammered. "You mean—" "I mean that when you cut that card," I said, "you didn't just stop me from buying a handbag. You cancelled the authorization for the $25,000 that pays for your life." Stephen looked up from the gravel. His face was grey. "You did it, Brenda," Stephen whispered. "You cut the income." "I didn't know," Brenda shrieked. "She didn't tell me." "You didn't ask," I said. "You assumed I was senile. You assumed I was a child on an allowance. You forgot that I ran a company with 300 trucks and 4,000 employees. I set up systems, Brenda, and you broke the system. Well, fix it, Brenda demanded, stomping her foot. Call them now. Order a new card. Reactivate the transfer. We need power. We need to get the car back. No, I said. What do you mean, no? I mean, I am not fixing it, I said. I liked the silence of the last few days. It gave me time to think, and I realized something. What? Stephen asked, standing up. I realized that I am not protecting my assets, I said. I am protecting myself. From you. I looked at the driveway. A black sedan had just pulled in. It wasn't a tow truck. It was a Lincoln Town car. Two men in dark suits stepped out. They were large men. They wore earpieces. Who are they? Stephen asked nervously. That is my security team, I said. Sent by Mr. Weiss. Security? Brenda laughed nervously. For what? For the eviction, I said. Eviction? Brenda's eyes nearly popped out of her head. You can't evict us. We live here. We have rights. Actually, I said, you don't. You are guests. You pay no rent. You have no lease. And according to the police report I filed this morning regarding the theft and destruction of my credit card. Theft, Brenda gasped. You took it from my hand, I reminded her, and destroyed it. That is destruction of property and financial abuse of an elder. Mr. Weiss has been very busy this morning. The two men walked up the steps. They stopped behind me. Mrs. Higgins, the taller one said. Is everything secure? Yes, James, I said. These are the trespassers. Trespassers? Stephen yelled. I am your son. You are a leech, Stephen, I said. And the host has finally developed an immunity. I looked at Brenda. She was shaking. Get your things, I said. You have 1 hour. James and his associate will supervise you. You may take your clothes. You may take your toiletries. You may not take the furniture, the art, or the wine, though I believe you drank most of it. Where will we go? Stephen cried. We have no car. We have no money. I don't know, I said. You are young. You are healthy. You have a consulting firm. Surely you can figure it out. I looked down at the $50 bill in my hand. I extended it to Stephen. Here, I said. He looked at it. What is this? Your allowance, I said. $50. Cash. He didn't take it. I stuffed it into the pocket of his shirt. Use it wisely, I said. Take a taxi to a motel, or buy some ramen noodles. It is amazing how far $50 can stretch when you don't have a choice. I turned my back on them. James, I said to the guard, if they are not off the property in 60 minutes, call the police. Yes, ma'am, James said. Martha, Brenda screamed, you will die alone. Do you hear me? You will be all alone in this big, dark house. I stopped at the door. I turned my head slightly. I would rather be alone in the dark, I said, than be eaten alive in the light. I walked inside and closed the heavy oak door. I locked the deadbolt. I listened. I heard Brenda screaming. I heard Stephen crying. Then I heard the heavy footsteps of the security guards escorting them toward the garage to pack their boxes. I walked to the kitchen. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the new debit card that had arrived via FedEx that morning to my P.O. box. I looked at the phone number on the back of the card. I dialed the electric company. This is Martha Higgins, I said. I would like to pay the past due balance on my account, in full, and please turn the power back on immediately. I gave them the number. Thank you, Mrs. Carson. Higgins, the operator said. We will send a signal to the smart meter. Power should be restored in 15 minutes. Thank you. I hung up. 15 minutes later, the lights flickered. The hum of the refrigerator returned. The heat kicked on, chasing away the chill. The house was warm again. I went to the window. I saw Stephen and Brenda walking down the long driveway, dragging 2 suitcases behind them. They looked small. They looked defeated. They were walking toward the main road to try and flag down a taxi with their $50. I watched them until they disappeared around the bend. Then, I went upstairs. I dressed in my best suit. I put on my pearls. I called a car service. Where to, Mrs. Higgins? The driver asked when he arrived. King of Prussia Mall, I said. Neiman Marcus. When I walked into the store, Sarah was there. She looked nervous when she saw me. Mrs. Higgins, she said. I am so sorry about the other day. Do not be sorry, Sarah, I said, smiling. It was a necessary clarification of boundaries. I walked to the display case. The cognac bag was still there. I believe I was in the middle of a transaction, I said. Yes, ma'am, Sarah beamed. I placed the bag on the counter. I reached into my purse. I pulled out the new card. It wasn't black metal yet, that was coming in the mail, but it was platinum. Will that be all? Sarah asked. Actually, I said no. I pointed to a matching wallet, and a silk scarf, and a pair of Italian leather gloves. Add those too, I said. Sarah rang them up. Total, $4,200. I tapped the card. Beep. Approved. Sarah handed me the heavy shopping bags. Happy birthday, Mrs. Porsche. Higgins, she said. Thank you, Sarah, I said. It really is. I walked out of the store. The bag felt heavy on my arm, but my heart felt light as a feather. I had my house back. I had my money back. And most importantly, I had my dignity back. I got into the waiting town car. Home, Mom? The driver asked. Yes, I said, home. And for the first time in 2 years, I knew that when I got there, it would finally be quiet.